It really truly all goes back to empathy, and being able to understand that other person's perspective, whether it was the stuff I was doing on QVC or having a conversation with a 4-year-old. It really is
It's the
the
same
same
thing.
skill set.
Hi, everyone. This is Christine Miles. Welcome to Shine a Light. It is my pleasure today to have Cathy Pedrayes here. Hi, Cathy.
Hi,
Uh,
thanks so much for having me.
Great to see you. You are known by having millions of internet followers, which is not an easy task. So you're doing some great work to help parents in particular and all of us. You are mom's friend, which I love. But you made an inspiring career shift from environmental scientist to media personality, author, and trusted safety content creator. Through your social media presence, television appearances, and now your new book, The Mom's Friend Guide to Everyday Safety and Security, you empower families to navigate the online world safely and confidently. So welcome.
Mhm. Thank you. Thanks. It's
Yeah.
quite the intro.
Yeah, well, congratulations. Well, so environmental scientist, let's just start there. Tell us more. Yeah.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's always been related to safety. Even when I was in college, I was thinking about it this morning. Even when I was in college studying to be an environmental scientist, as I would learn things, like, for example, I took a course on indoor environmental health, and we focus a lot on like asthma, mold, and whatever. So
Yeah.
as I would learn things, I developed a program to teach parents at a local high school about like what, and
Huh.
this was in college. But then my job as an environmental scientist, same thing. I was inspecting properties for environmental liabilities, which is often linked to, personal liabilities too, right? There's mold, there's asbestos, the groundwater's contaminated, the whatever. And it's always kind of been related to safety. It's
Yeah,
just the
that
safety
makes
environment
sense.
changed a little bit.
Yeah, well, because we take things for granted, our environments that are safe. Like the air we breathe, the things we do, we don't necessarily think about them being unsafe, but in fact, that's why we have inspections and do all those things, right? So how
Yeah.
did you get into that? Like what were you doing that you went, I want to do environmental safety?
Well, I think part of that was just like I've always was interested in environmental, all of that. But it was also the recession. I needed to kind of have a
Yeah.
recession-proof career and all of that. So I was like, I can't really, I probably would have studied media in undergrad if I had
Mm.
that flexibility and that safety net. But I was like, I don't. So
Yeah.
I need to get a job.
Okay. So, well, very practical of you. Good.
Very practical, but I did like love it. And, obviously it
Sure.
still actually inspires content today. I can't walk outside without spotting something. For
Yeah.
me, it's fun. For my friends, it probably drives them crazy, but
Yeah.
I think
Well,
it's fun.
knowledge is power, and it's also a little scary, isn't it? Because we can't deny as much. But I think that's
Yeah.
also important about the work that you're doing today, because we know there's so much to navigate and there's
hmm
so much to figure out, and it's a little overwhelming at times, isn't it?
It's incredibly overwhelming. There's also, especially with social media, right? What gets rewarded now in this attention economy that we've built online is clicks and headlines and partial information and whatever. And so it's a constant battle of trying to capture that attention
Yeah.
while also trying to present real nuanced information. And sometimes you oversimplify a little bit but then explain in the caption, or
Yeah,
it's a
sure.
battle. But the information I'm presenting is usually not the sexiest. We're talking about privacy settings, or this kind of safety, or this fire, and it's hard to get attention, but so far I've been managing.
Yeah, well, I think again that goes back to the importance of it, because for most of us, this isn't second nature. We don't know what
hmm
is on our phones. We don't know what's in our, whether that's a car seat, you talk about things like that if you're a parent,
Yeah.
to a setting on your phone. So I think it's really interesting how you've really navigated into this world and gone so specific to help all of us. But I
Yeah.
want to understand kind of, you said earlier, I probably would have gone into media. What were you like as a kid? Why media? Like, what is it that you like to help others? Clearly, but there's an aspect of this. Like, where did your passion show up when you were younger?
I think two things. One, I've always been a talker. One of the things I used to do as a kid, it was so weird, but I used to get my little. Everyone had like those little baby karaoke machines with the little
Oh,
plastic mics
sure.
attached to it. and I would just talk to the animals outside of my window for hours, like reading from books and interpreting what I was reading. As soon as somebody would walk by though, I would shut up because
That's
I would get too
funny.
embarrassed. But I used to do that all the time. And interestingly enough, then I became a host on QVC where my job was almost to talk to myself for 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So it worked out. But I also grew up in a home that had a really like profound sense of justice, I think. Like my
Mhm.
mom is like really a justice warrior, even with small things, not so much big things. We're not, tackling environmental legislation or things like that. It's small things. Somebody wasn't treated right at the, fast food joint. The school wasn't treating whatever. She didn't think a student was being treated fairly or so it was always small little battles, but I think it instilled in me a sense of that we have to do good everywhere. And, whether it's a small thing like a school environment like that, or with my content now where I'm talking about, privacy or online safety with kids and that kind of thing, I underlying it is like this sense of justice where I feel like people don't know and it's unfair that they don't know and it's unfair that they're being burdened with the consequences of not
Yeah.
knowing and it's unfair. And so that's kind of like my drive is I see it and I see it as a like this isn't right.
Yeah. And well, good for your mom, first of all. And way to observe that. What does your mom do? What or was she at home? Was she working as a teacher? Yeah.
Accountant.
Yeah.
Yeah, accountant. It's the one response that like so quickly shuts down any follow-up questions because accounting, well, that's it. But
Well,
no, really, accountant.
well, not that accountants can't have a sense of social justice. I think it's just not what we stereotypically think about. But I
Yeah.
think she, one could argue she pays attention to the details. So that may
Yeah.
be where that comes from a little bit, but I think there's a
Yeah.
high level of
She's also president of several homeowner associations.
okay.
So
Yeah.
she's got that aspect too. Yeah.
Well, that'll make you pay attention. Talk about having to be a politician and be able to navigate some
Basically.
difficult situations. But what I was going to say is, I think there's a real level of empathy that goes along with what you're describing in
Hmm.
seeing those kind of things and then wanting to do something about it, to get involved and not just sit by and
Yeah.
watch, right? Is that part of what you
Yeah.
observed?
100%. And even as a kid, outside of just these small little lessons, oh, actually, another, I guess, example of this, my mom really loves animals. And so I grew up like not only really respecting them and, doing things with rescues and stuff like that, but I grew up in a neighborhood where animal rights and respect, it wasn't that common. They were
Yeah.
property. People didn't always treat them correctly. And my mom made it known. She would, she would take people's animals sometimes. And she's like,
Mhm.
I'm animal control now. I'm handling this directly. And, and people would just listen to her. And
Yeah.
so I think I definitely grew up with that across the board. My mom took me, not all the time, but a couple times a year, there were like soup kitchen events that we would go to and we would pack groceries. And so it was kind of just always around. And I've maintained it as an adult.
Yeah, it sounds like you are a little version of her in some ways that you're doing well, at scale. Like you just took it to
Yeah.
scale, right? You're doing that work to scale. So you said you jumped to QVC. Tell us how you got into media after you went from your previous environmental studies. How did you make that leap?
Well, I think even while I was an environmental scientist, my coworkers, when I would explain things and be like, "Oh, did you hear about this?" and look at all of the, the features and benefits and all that stuff, my friends were like, "Oh, you sound like a QVC host," and I was like, "Do I?" And then I was like, "Oh, how do I become one of those?"
Good for
And then
you.
I just pursued it. It's an open casting call for like the nation, so I just applied, and then I got into it. But actually, interestingly, that taught me a lot. First of all, about personal safety because we were trained by former FBI and NSA and all of that. Because now you're in millions of homes and your personal
Yeah.
data has real life consequences, which I saw all the
Mm,
time. So that aspect, I was introduced to it and some good, healthy habits with that. But also, even from the product aspect, I got involved with quality control right away. I was the first
mm.
host to do that. And I saw how they tested products and how it was developed and even like tracking how things, if they would stay together in shipping. And again, it's all related to
It
safety, but
all is
just different
related to safety.
aspects.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could have just been on air selling stuff, but you
Right.
really took it to another level and said, "I wanna this matters what I'm selling." to the
Yeah,
person,
and I really
right?
wanted to understand it. And I started participating in like our test studies that we would do when new products came out. I was the only host who had done that and would consistently go and be a part of it.
Yeah, yeah, good. Lift the hood of the car, right? Lift the hood of the
Yeah,
car a little bit. Yeah,
because it's not really part of the job description. It's the more corporate, like nine
yeah,
to five, that it was like different offices, but we were encouraged to meet with different offices and get to really understand how the business worked. Most people met with like the buyers and all of that, which I also met with, but I was really into the nitty gritty,
yeah.
the
That's amazing.
sciencey part.
Well, so the QVC happens to be in my backyard. I'm in the Philadelphia suburbs, and I've earlier in my career, I was with an organization where I was a consultant at QVC, and I've have talked with and met various hosts throughout the years. And what I always think is, it's not as easy as you make it look. It's
Yeah.
you just said I talked to myself for 3 to 4 hours. People don't realize how hard that is, right? It's not. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not easy.
I think during the first, although I will say, I think teachers do something similar, right? Where you're like talking all day. Because one of the things I noticed was the constant smiling, my cheeks got sore,
Oh wow.
dehydration from talking so much.
Yeah,
We always had our water bottles and all of that on set, but there was a lot of just like kind of physical things. Then you get used to it.
sure, it takes a lot of
Um,
stamina. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And no potty breaks, no
yeah.
snack breaks.
A lot of
But by
time.
the way, I could go longer because I did it. I did a live on TikTok for almost 9 hours, no bathroom or snack
Wow,
breaks or anything like
marathon.
that. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, so I
yeah,
could talk.
yeah. Well, I think it's understanding. It's not just about talking,
Hmm.
right? It's
Right.
understanding about what the need is, what the listener wants to hear, tapping into what the needs of the customers are. That's the complicated part of the role, right? And so that's the
Yeah.
tie-in that I see into
I
the work you're doing today is that you're deeply understanding what we may need and not know we need and helping us get informed about that. Yeah.
I agree. Even with QVC, like you said, it wasn't just about selling stuff. We were really doing a service, right? There are people
Yeah.
who don't have a million stores on every single corner. They don't live in New York
Yeah.
City, or it's maybe it's harder for them to get from one place to another. And so everything that we described, we really had to consider, is this the right color? Is this the right length?
Yeah.
Who could really benefit from this? And also put yourself second, because what's your taste or not your taste or what it doesn't, you're not in this picture. You're providing a service for someone else. And that was something
Yeah.
we were really trained on, but also something I like truly believed in.
Yeah, yeah, that understanding. So how do you hope to be helping people today? Like, what is it that if you had like a purpose, a mission, what do you want to see your benefit be in the work you're doing?
I mean, I think in some ways I want to encourage people because we see a lot of scary, these headline kind of baity things online. And so in one way, I want people to understand like you already have the skills. Likely to combat this, right? You have your instincts. You've been through, parents have been around for generations and generations, and things have changed. And the instincts of a parent is more or less the same, but we're changing the setting a little bit, right? So, okay, you're concerned about them being online without any leashes and whatever. All right, let's discover like what solutions exist for that. Are they perfect? No. Can we do more? Of course. But what do we have now that can
Mhm.
really help? And so I try to focus on that too. Like, while I would love to see, all of these structural changes and
Sure.
definitely bring awareness to those topics, that's for down the line. I'm really concerned with like what we can do right now. So it's encouraging that you have the instincts and there are tools that can help. And
Yeah.
and also the empathy that keeps coming up in conversation, I think is really important, because one of the things, especially as a parent, that is somewhat of a challenge is like it's not about control, it's about developing a skill set. It's about having empathy for the other person's perspective, which in some cases is your child, in other
Yeah.
cases, it could be another parent or another person.
Yeah. But the resources are within. I mean, we have the resources. We just have to
Hmm.
tap into it, believe in it, and then take the measures we can because we can't control everything. That's what I hear you saying.
Right.
Like,
No,
control
we
what you can
definitely
control.
cannot.
Yeah, we'd like
And
to.
if you try to, it's likely to backfire.
Yeah. So what's the biggest fear that you think parents are experiencing right now? What are you coming across and What do you believe as the mom's friend? What's the top 3 we should be focused on?
Yeah, I believe, I mean, probably the biggest fear would be the online stuff, right?
Yeah,
Especially with teens on the internet. What kind of information are they getting? You know, there's all these subcultures that are influencing your kids, and like, this stuff is random. It is like deep in the internet. And
yeah,
so, how do you even know what's going on? And then having to manage the settings. Every single app is different. It's very overwhelming. And by the way, you have a job, you have laundry, you have dinner to get on the table, you have the 50 million school forms
yeah,
to fill out every 2 weeks. So, I mean, it's a lot to manage, but I think if we tackle it kind of like a home to-do list, and just try to go one by one, what things that come up one at a time. I would like parents to, you know, with the fear that we see online, take note that these things happen, but also take it within context, right? Like, it's happened, let's say, to 1% of users, or what, like, try to see the bigger picture, and then try to tackle what is the thing that's coming up in your home right away. So my child is on this video gaming platform. Okay,
okay,
like, what are the things on that video gaming platform? What are the settings? What are, luckily we have AI that can actually help speed up this process for us, but a lot of these apps have family safety centers.
mm,
And so I would just tackle with, like, what are the settings? Do that first, setting up the accounts, and then also play whatever the thing is a little bit, or scroll on the social media thing a little bit, just to understand the baseline.
yeah,
Because then the scary headlines of, like, oh, NyQuil chicken is taking over homes. Like, if you were on TikTok, you would know that that wasn't a thing. It
okay,
was just like a scary headline, right? So sometimes things get like a little bit blown out of proportion. And so, but if you understand the platforms and are on it a little bit, which is a lot because some kids could be on 15 platforms, but
right.
one step at a time, you can do
Right.
it. You can do it.
One step at a time. And I'm, maybe my kid knows more about how to run these platforms than I do. So
Yes.
so then what do we do?
Yes. Then it becomes a conversation, right? Like, you sit beside them and do the thing together, because there are things that you know more about and there are things that they know more about.
Sure.
So they might know the nitty gritty of, oh, how do I play the game, whatever, but you might be better at identifying a scam in that platform. And actually, a lot of, particularly with games, a lot of them have come out with like these fake little games that kids can
Mhm.
play before they get on the real thing. So, for example, Minecraft is one of them. They have a cyber safe series, and you can install this like little mini controlled game where they're exposed to somebody asking for personal information,
Mm,
somebody asking to trade, that, just to practice. It's really about practice. It's same with us, right? Like, once we've done something enough, we're familiar with it. It becomes muscle memory. We can identify
yeah.
the red flags. And that's something that could really start early. I have a 4-year-old, and when we watch our YouTube videos, we've learned that sometimes what's on the thumbnail is not what's really in the video, because you'll see
Mm,
a dinosaur toy, click on it, and then the video is about Mickey Mouse toys. And
I
so,
see.
something as small as that, I'm teaching him already to distrust what we're seeing, even though it's a controlled thumbnail in the
Sure.
YouTube Kids app that I've but still.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like you're treating the phone, or what I call a computer. It's really more than a phone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's an
Yeah.
iPad, is as a friend, and really getting to know that friend before you let them spend time together, right?
Hmm.
Talk to that
Yeah.
friend, understand what that friend's going to share with them, and how to navigate it, right? Step by step.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you said, it is more than a phone now. It's truly infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Like, being without a phone is, you feel like you're missing a limb, and adults can relate to that too.
Yeah.
And so, but so they're going to need a phone, they're going to need computer, they're going to need all these things, but it's about slowly building the skills so that, when they're flying away on their own, you
Yeah.
you feel comfortable with it. But it's really hard, because sometimes in doing that we need to check ourselves too, because we get scared, and out of fear we might, you know, overreact or try to control, or and it's a constant balance. But it's something that I think that, luckily, thanks to social media, instead of, I know there's a lot of like demonizing of social media, but I think because of social media, we're exposed to different types of parenting skills and theories that I think, me personally, has really helped. Like,
Yeah.
I understand toddler tantrums very differently now than, I would have 15 years ago, before I had kids and before all of these like great accounts online teaching me things,
Yeah, well, it's an
which of course you have to
amazing.
fact check.
Of course, but it is an amazing resource. I remember my father passed away at 89 in 21, and he was a tennis player. And I pulled up YouTube, 6 months we were, spending time together, and I showed him all the tennis tutorial videos that he was like, I would have loved this self
Hmm.
education and this self, because we can go to our own university, and if we want to,
Hmm.
right, and really study and look with some discerning help, is what I hear you saying.
Of course.
You got to look, right. But yes, it's an amazing, I like what you said, infrastructure. It's an amazing infrastructure if we know how to use it and we know how to
Right.
navigate it safely, right.
Right. And from our kids' perspective, I mean, that brings up, it's not just about the screen time that they're spending online, but the quality of what they're learning, right? Are they following, do they love knitting and they're following their knitting crafting, and trying to learn new patterns or whatever? Or are they just consuming brain rot, which is like the internet
Yeah.
slang for just like really junky AI slop, whatever. In which case, yeah, maybe get them outside into a sport or something.
What's your advice on the best practices for the amount of screen time and the type? What did you call it? Brain rot. I love that. So
Yeah.
what's the proportion here? To educate us as parents, as we know the anxious generation. We know a lot about the fact that it's an
Yeah.
inordinate amount of time on screens, both for adults and kids.
Yeah.
This is a universal problem, and
Yeah.
we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So what's the safety advice here in terms of the
Yeah, I
amount
think
of time?
so the American Academy of Pediatrics, right. The American Academy of Pediatrics recently came out with some new guidance on this where it's not like, here's my 30 minutes for the day. Although under 2, yes, they recommend like minimal screen time unless you're doing like FaceTime with a family member, those
Sure.
kinds of things is a little different. Um but so there's certainly guidance for that, but I would say when it comes to older kids, it really varies per family, unfortunately. Like, I wouldn't want my kid, sitting on the phone scrolling for hours and hours and hours. But at the same time, if we're talking about screen time, if they're watching a movie, right, that's
Yeah.
a little bit slower pace and what that's very different than scrolling AI slop online so it really depends on what it is and for as a parent, what it is that you want to limit. So like I would probably prioritize limiting things like social media.
Yeah.
I wouldn't also allow 10 movies a day, like
Yeah.
maybe a movie,
Sure.
maybe social media, maybe there's, an hour of gaming. It also depends on the day of the week and the activities.
Sure.
And there's so much. Like I'm way more flexible on the weekends than I am during the week. And I'm
Yeah.
way more at restaurants and airplanes. Their screen time limits do not exist for me.
Yeah. Because you're balancing what the repercussions are for the environment around. Yeah. I
Right.
I do think
And I'm also the feedback from the child, right? Like, is your child still participating in active play? Are they still getting good grade? Like, you're taking cues from your environment as well and really trying to be like honed in on that. And then letting that guide you.
yeah. Watching how are they self-soothing? Are they able to still engage? Are they getting more irritated after time? There's a lot of things to look for.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. My kids who are little, right? 2 and 4, when it's time for bed, they close the iPad on their own. I don't do it for them. And they've learned to do that
Mm.
without a battle. But sometimes when they give me a battle, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm like, well, if we can't manage this, properly, then we can't have last bedtime show anymore. And listen, I don't know if they understand me, but they seem to just do what I said. So it works for now.
Well, you've obviously set the boundary up so that, and you're helping them learn how to turn it off, from what I hear you saying.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
do it on their
That
own.
Yeah, that it's part of that. So, yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's really, I mean, there's data now that shows that doing something together is also different than, like you said, just scrolling. We have to look at the type of things that we're doing. Shared experiences are much more powerful and helpful than just that isolated. And certainly, I mean, yours are very young, but for older kids, being isolated in their rooms and using devices as that self-soothing rather than as like you said, learning something new, having it being more educational, and not just getting down into that rabbit hole, right?
Right. And I would set a boundary with the bedroom of no overnight phones in the room. I think we've seen some things in terms of safety that it's just not a great combination. But,
Yeah.
phone is one thing. Overnight phone in the room, I personally I've decided to set a boundary with that even though I'm not there yet.
Yeah, sure. Well, you know where that goes. So, what are
Hmm.
some of the other ways that you're helping through the work that you're doing with moms and parents, and the kind of things that, from a safety perspective, we should top three we should have on our radar. So, one is obviously the phones, or the
Yeah.
computers, or the infrastructure, and like
Hmm.
amazing access to things, and we have to set up those safeguards. What else? What else,
Yeah.
Kathy?
I would say another big one is, and I don't know, this may overlap a little bit with what I talked about
Okay.
already, but when you see things in the news or when you see a scam online or when you see, I would use that as an opportunity to have a conversation, right? Show them, and there are tools for this as well, but you come across it probably daily with your own scrolling or phone calls or whatever. So there's a lot of like AI scams with the voice, with video. People are talking about that online. I would talk to my child about how to identify these things. What are some red flags? That's constantly evolving. What are things we could protect? What are things we can do to protect our family from this kind of thing? Because there was one just recently that went viral, actually, where a mother received a video voice uh, call from her daughter that was supposedly at the Ring camera trying to get in home from school early because the whole thing was
Mm,
AI and totally made up. So just knowing, I think if we just know what's out there, scams can get as technical and evolved and all of that stuff as they want. At the core, it's the same. It's the sense of urgency. It's the not double checking. It's something fearful to cause you to do a quick
yeah.
reaction, whether that's using your family, whether that's, oh, your bank got hacked. The tactics so far seem to be the same. So as long as we're familiar with those tactics
Pretty
and then,
consistent.
talk about how that's evolving, yeah, it's not so scary when you see that. So I would say that's one of them. Like when you see things in the news, I would talk about it. It's hard because we want to just be like, never do this, never do this. But I
Right.
would use it as a
Rather than
conversation.
educate. So
Yeah,
it's an educational moment, right? It's a moment. Yeah. Yeah. So
right. And it happens all the time, every week.
what are the
Mhm.
flags? What are the consistent flags? You said sense of urgency. So keep
Sense
going.
of urgency
There's
is a
some
big one. There's also, so the sense of urgency usually comes from something out of fear, right? So
mm,
someone's been kidnapped, someone is sick, someone's been in an accident, there's been a travel or banking issue. It's something that would cause you to act out of fear. And then the second thing is where they slip in, pay this amount or provide this password or asking
yeah.
for some kind of information. But this could be online too. I mean, even, the examples I'm giving are kind of drastic with
Dramatic.
kidnapping
Yeah.
but it also happens with just shopping online, right? Like AI scams that try to get you to buy these like subpar counterfeit products or whatever and also steal your information, and that can cost a household thousands of dollars. And actually in those instances, young people are even more susceptible because they're spending more time online shopping. So
Yeah.
we could go drastic, but we could also go little, just to because it's
Yeah.
consistent
It
regardless.
doesn't It doesn't always have to be a big safety fear or something like that. It can just be
Hmm.
smaller ways. Look, I have an IT company. Most workplaces have that, where they do, test phishing expeditions to make sure that you're not
Yeah.
clicking a button and doing all those things. So it makes sense that this is the advice that you're giving, to say, hey, just take these extra steps. And as you do that, you educate along the way and create a dialogue that really
Right.
makes this less scary. And because we do hear these headlines all the time, right? We hear them and
All
we
the time.
worry, and then yeah, yeah. So it's kind of, it goes back to go beneath the surface, right? Shine that light on beneath the
Right.
surface. That's a big
And
deal. Yeah,
of course, like the headlines always remind us of the important 101 kind of basic skills, right? Of not handing out too much personal information, not lingering in a parking lot or whatever, even though probably 9 times out of 10, maybe we're okay. But, still, it's just a good habit. So it does remind us
Yeah.
of those things, but we also just have to take it within context. And I personally, one thing for me is if something is making me fearful of anything, that is my immediate red flag. And then usually what I do
Okay.
at that point, and I don't care what it is, it could be your cutting board has bacteria. Okay. Well,
Mm,
why are you scaring me like that? Now I'm going to go and look up, well, what types of woods? How do you care for it? Is it true? What types of that? Like, I'm going to look up the whole thing to then get like, the full picture, because online it'll just
yeah.
say, your cutting board has bacteria, your whatever. And I need more information to fully understand that.
Right. Yeah, because most things have bacteria. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I think there's bacteria. So is it right? I mean, nothing has more
Right,
bacteria than our
right.
phones, as far as I understand. So
Yeah.
again,
And I
go
made up that
deeper.
example, although I'm sure that video exists.
It sounded very believable, Kathy. That's funny.
Yeah,
I made that up.
I made it up.
So, so okay. So what's the scamming and the sense of urgency? Maybe some overlap, but what's the third thing that is an area that you think should be at the top of our list in terms of these safety concerns?
I think the third thing would probably be like the action steps. Like, what can you do about it? This thing happened. This red flag popped up. This new app is a concern. What can we do now? And one thing I will say is
Okay.
when it comes to new apps and things like that, I'm also very cautious. I'm very hesitant to download new things on my phone. This is something I have to discuss with. So I have a much younger sister. She's like 18 years younger than me. So she was, 2 when I was in college. And so a lot of these conversations I have with her where, she's constantly downloading every app that everybody tells her because, oh, the discount codes and all of this. And I'm like, okay, pause.
Mm,
We need to think about why is it free, what is the data that they're collecting, how do we review that, if we're not using it, clean it up, get the stuff off your phone, right? So it's about building digital hygiene. Also, another thing that I've had, and this is a constant battle, but because we're on the subject with teens and all of that,
yeah, please.
is the
Yes.
yeah, the sharing passwords as the new best friend
Mm.
necklace. Not okay, not okay, and
Tell
it
us more.
drives
Take
me
us back.
insane.
I haven't heard about this, so educate us.
Yes. So friends like to share accounts as a way to, prove that they're really trustworthy, that this is really your friend. So sharing accounts, sharing passwords, sharing locations is huge. I mean, my teen niece has like 1,000 different locations on her phone. That is, she says she doesn't share location. Everyone shares it with her. But, that's another thing because that's could potentially be a safety issue. I mean, ideally, 1,000 people is a lot, but ideally, you trust your immediate close circle. But it
Sure.
also leads to a lot of social issues of, oh, why were these 5 hanging out and I wasn't invited?
Mm.
And they start tracking them like little Sims on the video game. So
And so
there's
it becomes exclusion and fear of missing out and all these other things that can lead to other problems with bullying and social things. And yeah, anonymity is
yeah.
power in some ways, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh, 100%. They also treat their camera rolls, like their drafted camera rolls in apps as if it was private, right? So they might, post something maybe a little bit more risque or maybe just something
Mm.
embarrassing, but those draft things are not private. They could be hacked at any time, not to mention that they usually don't have great password hygiene. It's a lot of like dog and birthday and the two-factor authentication. And so all of these things combined is really a disaster. That's why a lot of teens get like locked out of their accounts often and have to like start new accounts because it's the password hygiene. So ideally as a parent, I would oversee that when I get to that stage because I already see how it's working from other from other teens in my family. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's teaching that because children are growing up in an age where they're constantly being surveilled. We didn't grow up like that. But
No.
nowadays, every Chromebook, every, like data thing that they're doing at school with the homework, the activities. They even have sensors in the bathrooms that, alert for like, aggressive language and whatever, which I
Mm,
understand because maybe violence happens in a bathroom. But, because of the safety conversation at school, there's a lot of surveillance. And so they're kind of growing up in this age where they feel privacy doesn't exist. And why does it matter? All my stuff is
yeah,
out there anyways. And so
yeah,
part of my job is combating that and be like, well, it does exist. And you know, just because you grew up like that doesn't mean you share your passwords with all of your best friends, or, like trying to establish some boundaries, because they're not getting that right now. They have to be
yeah.
taught. We have to be taught too.
Yeah, it's because, well, I was trained as a clinician in my 20s, where one-way mirror and people watching. And one of the things that I learned in that process is, and I'm sure you felt similarly being in the media and on TV, is at first you're very aware of the camera. You're so
Hmm.
aware of the camera, and I was so aware of the people in the camera. And then as time goes on, that just goes away because it becomes part of the environment. And so you let your guard down, and you start to,
Hmm.
so I can see how being born into this and raised with this, it becomes so second nature that it feels like it's just natural that this doesn't belong to us in a way, right? It's
Right.
not really. And so, and you give up before you start trying, maybe, because it's like,
Yeah.
what's the point, right?
Well, and it feels ubiquitous and it feels overwhelming even for adults. But actually, kids have the benefits that if they start with good hygiene habits early, it does protect them more as adults, right? Like
Yeah,
when the internet and all of these things came out, we didn't know. And so our
sure.
information is like, we have 400 unused accounts and
Yeah.
passwords, and we have stuff everywhere. But now we know better. And so we can actually, that can help protect them. There was some data that came out. I forget the name of the group. I think it was called like Super Friends, or Super Awesome, something like that. But anyways, there was some data that came out that said by the time a student or a child is like an early teen, I want to say like 12 or 13 or something, that 75 million data points is collected on them. I should
Wow.
look that up to just double check. But
Wow.
the number was egregious. Like by the time they were a
Yeah.
teen, 75 million data points. And
Wow.
and we have laws to prevent data collection on children and all of that stuff. But, this is where we're at right now. And so those things need to
We're
change
right.
too, but also like us having good hygiene can also protect in those instances.
This term digital hygiene, I think, is really important. And I think, that's kind of the umbrella that you're really talking about. And just in the digital world in general, is that
Hmm.
there's how we have hygiene in the household in terms of where do we allow, what time do we allow, how long do we
Hmm.
allow, what's the app, and then what are the settings. It's all digging kind of down through that. And that may feel like a pretty big mountain to climb. So you better just take it one step at a time, right? Just one step
Right.
at a time to help bring that to a different level. And that awareness alone helps, rather than just don't be on that app or fearing,
Right.
will help your kids navigate this and you navigate this more easily.
Exactly. And the second part of that is that they need to feel comfortable coming to the parents or a trusted adult with whatever is going wrong, right? They need to feel like they're not being judged, because when they don't have someone with knowledge and experience who can help guide them, they end up
Yeah.
turning to people who don't have knowledge and experience and then can get guided in the wrong. I think a lot of us, grew up thinking like, oh, how were babies made or something? And you ask your
Yeah.
friends at school and then you find out from your parents that it was totally a lie.
Yep.
So
Or
those,
Santa.
think of, yeah, right. Like think of those kinds of questions,
Yeah.
but bigger. And like the truth is teens don't know as much, so they're unlikely to get good advice from their friend group. They need an adult, a trusted figure. And actually for a parent, you can even tell them like, hey, if you're too scared to come to me for something, go to auntie, go to the neighbor,
Yeah.
help them establish who else they might feel comfortable with. Because, there is a power dynamic with parenting. So
Or they're gonna
maybe,
get in trouble. There's gonna be a problem, they're gonna get
right.
in trouble. Yeah, or as parents, it's just easier to react because we're closer to it
Hmm.
rather than
And
as
we're
the
scared.
auntie. I understand that, that's a great idea. Again, something very practical that, I'm just gonna go back to something you said. You have a sister that you said is 18 years younger,
Yeah.
16
Yeah.
years younger? So you've been like a little mom for a while, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen, you know, because I have different teens in my family, I've seen people who use it very responsibly and
Yeah.
then and have like a really strong family foundation. And I feel like it's very healthy. They seem to be doing great with access to their phones, or whatever. And then I've seen the opposite of like, oh, well, I don't have a trusting, supportive family structure, and so instead I'm using the internet as an escape, and that
Hmm.
becomes a dangerous route.
That's when it gets tricky, isn't it? That's when it becomes
Hmm.
really, that's the concern, is that we're isolating into this world rather than sharing this world, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it is hard to navigate as a parent, but I think it's something that we can truly start early. We check in with ourselves and then with our kids, these are skills that we start early. And I think going back to what we talked about in the beginning of the conversation, it really truly all goes back to empathy, and being able to understand that other person's perspective. Whether it was the stuff I was doing on QVC or having a conversation with a 4-year-old, it really is
It's the
the
same
same
thing.
skill set.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, and you're anticipating and helping us do the homework so that we don't have to think as hard, which is what I appreciate, right?
Yes, actually, I was just talking about this with a friend this week. I briefly mentioned it, but there are internet subcultures that to me are a red flag. If my child
Mm.
came home mentioning certain acronyms or it would be a red flag to me that they are going down a bad spiral on the internet. But how is a parent going to know about these things? They are not brand friendly language. They're not, and so I've considered like coming out with a series because I am plugged into like
You are.
not to I have my side and then I have my very best friend who is plugged in on like the dark side because he's a gamer, right? And
Okay.
gamer culture can very quickly spiral. And so, and also he's a man. Men are targeted differently online than women are. The
How so?
algorithm, the algorithm spots that right away and will like for a man, especially like say a young teen or whatever, will start feeding them dating advice and then maybe some toxic
Mm.
beauty standards. And it gets, and for girls, they have that as well with the body image and all of that. But, it's interesting how the algorithm, oh, and sports, obviously men will get sports, but it's interesting how actually this is a good project, I guess, when you get that first device in the phone or open a secondary account and set it up as if you're a guy and see how quickly it
Mm.
spots that you're not
Wow.
just by
Wow.
how you engage. It's quick, it's minutes, it knows right away. And
It knows
so
right away, even if you're trying to scam it, even if you're trying to
yeah,
trick it, it knows.
it's really hard to scam it because it's not our instinct, right? Like it's
Yeah.
it's just it knows. But I will say, speaking of that, there are settings in the app that I use all the time, even for myself as an adult, but I would definitely use for kids, where you can deprioritize certain content, block certain hashtags, reset the algorithm if you feel it's getting like I've reset my algorithm for my sister when she was younger because there were things that I did not approve of. And so I've reset it and
Okay.
scrolled through myself and tried re-engaging with like kitten accounts, cooking account, like, the really happy
Mm.
go lucky stuff on the internet just to try to like fix it. It takes
Yeah.
training. But you can do
I
that.
see.
So I mean it's not perfect, but it does help. But yeah, I've considered coming out with a series where I say like, hey parents, like if you hear these things, red flag. Here's a
Yeah.
really small example that is more like brand friendly, but like a plug. If you know, a plug is somebody who seeks out like substances, illegal substances, and they plug it to the buyer, right? So that's like a
Hmm.
small little term. But now if you're looking through the text messages and you see plug, you
I
know that
see.
that's a spot because they're always going to find a way to get there's languages within languages to get around the filters. So you have to
Yeah.
know, and
Because
it's
it
impossible.
seems like a benign term, right? It seems benign.
Right.
So plug, but it out of context is what you look for.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's things that I've just thought I was like this is impossible for parents. I should really come out with a series that's like here's all the things that are red flags. I'm afraid to go into it. I might lose every brand sponsorship I've ever had because
Well,
it's not like I'm not comfortable talking about it. It's vulgar. But as a parent,
yeah.
you should know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. Well, I appreciate your vulnerability there because there's real business to this, and it's important when you're providing the kind of content you're providing. But there is a side of it that if you expose it, that it's hard to talk. These are hard subjects to talk about. Yeah,
There's also the hate from these communities, right? Like you're exposing them in a not light way. There's definitely safety concerns with that, especially being a woman on the internet. So there's a lot of
yeah,
considerations. I mean, the brand partnerships is like the least of my concern, but
sure,
because I think that'll be okay. But also my content is clean. I don't
yeah,
like talk about certain things. And so I'm not the most comfortable talking about that stuff, but I don't see anyone else doing it. And I think it's
yeah,
needed.
yeah.
So I don't know. I just had this
But
conversation 2 days ago.
Well, I'm in, I think so this is a great segue to this because as you've been talking and just getting to know you and the work you're doing and just the inordinate, I mean, this is a second language, right? So a lot of the things
Hmm.
you're saying, and I want to just, before I segue, say that this is part of how people can listen to you via the very short videos that you have on your Instagram, where they don't have to be over one at a time. They can kind of go through and just say, hey, I want to learn about this. And you walk them through in a very simple way as a tutorial
Yeah.
and the things they can keep an eye on so that if you feel overwhelmed as you're listening, you're like, but I want to do something, just start there. That can be a very helpful first step. I'm just thinking like the impact that you're having, like what that means to you. I'm thinking back to how you shared about your mom and just animal control and taking these one-offs and, you know, that it's so like, what's it like to know that you're making the difference in families to help them navigate this?
It's interesting because it almost feels like a one-way conversation, right? Because there's a screen and I mean, yes, there's comments and whatever, but you're still kind of disconnected from what's happening. So I don't think I fully realize the impact until someone approaches me on the street and the conversation comes up or I get a DM that says, hey, your video on this helped me with this. A small example is the other day I was at an event with my friend. She was having a baby shower and she's an Amazon influencer. So she had invited some of her other Amazon influencer friends. And one of the friends, we were talking about baby toys and whatever. And one of the friends said, oh, I actually learned how to shop safer from you. And I was like, oh, interesting, because I don't post any affiliate links or anything, but I just talk about the general concepts
Yeah,
about avoiding counterfeits and what I do to try. And, it was a small thing. We're talking about
sure.
just some little toys or whatever. But she had learned that from that account. So like, I was like, oh, I didn't even realize people were
Yeah,
consuming that really in that way. So I think hearing from stories, and also when I go to a place or an event or something and I'm speaking with someone and they're like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I do online safety education, et cetera. And then when it comes up about, I teach privacy or cybersecurity, et cetera. And then they go, oh, like, what's your page? Whatever. And then they go to it and they say,
yeah,
2.5 million followers, 300,000. What? And I'm like, yeah, people are
yeah,
actually interested in this. Believe it or not, it's a lot of people.
yeah. It's a lot. Well,
And
so I can appreciate that one-way screen thing because this is it kind of mirrors what you're doing too. It makes the point
yeah.
that it's powerful whether it's good or bad, right? And there's a lot of good
Hmm.
out there, just like in the world. So this is how you can, I can appreciate how it can feel disconnected, but I can only imagine the pull through that you're getting in terms of just the one thing that makes a difference and that one thing and how a parent navigates whatever the issue is has to have a big ripple effect, a big ripple effect at a time
And
when it's confusing. It's confusing.
yeah, and I'll add that it's also come a long way, right? I've been doing this for 5 years or maybe going on 6 years now. And so I've seen how things have changed from, just the simple, like, did you know your phone could do these three things to,
Yeah.
oh, now for example, there was a surveillance pricing bill introduced a few months ago, I think at the end of last year in Congress. And the one who published that online was me. I got invited to
Mhm.
because I had a viral video talking about surveillance pricing and et cetera. And I hate that stuff too. I hate using data to take advantage of people and pricing. And,
Sure.
again, goes back to the justice thing. But,
Yeah, I
I
love
was
it.
invited. And actually, while I was there in Congress, I was told that some of my other videos were getting passed around unbeknownst to me. And lobbyists had seen things and some people got upset and whatever. And I was like, oh, I guess I won't reach out to them for a brand deal. but,
Yeah. Yeah.
little thing. And so you hear people talking about it and you realize the impact you're having, but I don't see it on my end unless I'm told from
Yeah, sure.
conversations.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But what's your hope for the future of your work here? Do you have like what do you think about what's next and how you want to help? Because
My
this is
hope,
service. This is service. You talked about it
yeah,
like QVC, it's service. Yeah.
it is. My hope is that it would be obsolete, entirely unneeded. And that
Love it.
everything that I've ever said would just cease to exist, and that's it. And then I'll probably find maybe something else another new battle. But I am encouraged by how much I've seen things change. I've seen an enormous amount of awareness and interest in the subject. Even now, talking about data with kids, there's this
Yeah.
movement about, are we using technology intentionally in school? Teachers are talking about it. Parents are talking about it. And so I'm glad to see that people are having the conversation, because when I started, which wasn't that long ago, it really felt like a who cares, like you're
Yeah.
screaming into the void kind of thing. And
Yeah.
now it is not like that at all. People care.
They
And
care.
that's the first step, because things are starting to change. States have introduced all types of legislation for
Yeah.
all types of things that 6 years ago I wouldn't have even thought were possible. And we're not talking about just like, New York or California who leads in this kind of stuff. We're talking about Kentucky just
Yeah.
introduced a bill on, TV data, and Texas just had one on smart. So it's everywhere. Hundreds of pieces of legislation. And so it's really cool and encouraging. And then my job is just to let people know that those things are out there, because, the press releases don't go very far.
No, press releases don't do the work. It takes someone with a vision to make the difference and the personality for people to want to listen. I can see why people come to you for that advice. And so help people figure out where they find you, where they find your book. Remind us where to get that and how to follow you on Instagram and the other socials.
Yeah, everything is under my name, Cathy Pedrayes, and actually the link in my bio. Oh God, I can't believe I just said that out loud. The link in bio has access to my other pages and my the book on Amazon and whatever, all kinds of things. Luckily, the book has my biggest fear with it was that certain chapters would age very quickly because it talks about technology. And by the way, it's not like a novel type of book. It's more like a resource guide where you flip to sections. But anyways, so far it's holding. It's
Good,
holding. So
good, good.
it's been
Well,
okay.
because it changes so fast, but the principles are probably very much the
Exactly.
same in terms of that. So, well,
Hmm.
find Cathy on Instagram and other places. Do some clicking on her videos because you will get educated quickly, and it's not hard to find what you're looking for on your site either, because there's such a breadth of information. So, Cathy, it's
That
been
is,
so great.
oh, I was
Go
just
ahead.
going to add, that's one place where the algorithm helps, because if you just search Cathy in a specific subject, videos will come up. But also DM me, because I have a mental catalog of every video I've ever published. And if you're like, do you have a video on this? I will remember it, I will find it, and I will send it.
Well, that's amazing. Talk about service. So, well, wonderful. Well, Cathy, thank you. Tell your mom thank
Thank
you
you.
for bringing, a daughter into the world that wants to keep the family mission going at scale. So, a pleasure to know you. Reach out to Cathy, DM her, check out her stuff, and thank you everyone for joining us today on Shine a Light. I'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.